Welcome to our Wednesday. We'll call the meeting to order for November 6th. Disclose your pecuniary interest. If you have any, please forward them through to our clerk. Minutes of the previous meeting from October 16th. Is any errors or omissions or business arising from that? Seeing none, need a motion to pass the minutes. Councillor Daigle, Councillor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. And our next item of business is delegation for our economic development strategic plan. And Felicia, would you like to do introductions here first?
So I can introduce Aileen and David. They were our consultants for the draft economic development strategy.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. We're happy to be here tonight to walk through the strategy that we've been working on for several months with your Economic Development Advisory Committee. If I'm wondering if we're able to pull up the presentation. Perfect. Thank you so much. So we have a number of things we'd like to go through today. And it is not moving forward.
Is it turned on?
It is on. And it was working when we
Oh, there it is.
tested it.
There it is.
Oh, okay, very good. So so we're going to talk about a few things today. Just we want to make sure that we're all talking about the same terminology and we have the same understanding of what economic development means. And so we'll start with a discussion about the components of economic development. Then we'd like to talk about the methodology that was used to develop this strategic plan and how we came to the vision, mission, goals, objectives that are there. David's going to do a bit of a review of the economic and demographic analysis that provided the basis of the recommended direction for the strategy. I'll take a look at the community engagement that helped to inform the strategy as well, and what the findings were from there. And then we want to talk about what the priorities are for, we believe, for North Middlesex. We'll do a review, a high-level review of the elements of the strategic plan, and then talk about the next steps, which will be in your hands, which is the implementation. Okay. So when you think about economic development, many people think of the investment attraction piece, and absolutely, that's very important. Investment attraction is bringing money from outside the community into the community that benefits all. And so very important. But there's a lot of other components to economic development that people may not think about. And I think it's important to look at it in that holistic manner. So community revitalization is supporting investments in the community to freshen things up, to provide an attractive environment for investment to happen, for the business connections to happen. Planning and infrastructure, making sure that you have the capacity to support the existing businesses and new businesses, whether that's water, wastewater, internet connection, natural gas, all of those things are really important components. Planning, making sure that you've got the land and the vision of where investment would go within the community. All of those things are important components to making sure that you are investment ready. Sector development is understanding those sectors that are important areas of activity, of economic activity within your community, and areas of potential growth in your community. For example, we see that agriculture obviously is an important sector in North Middlesex. It's not the only sector, but understanding the drivers for new investment and ongoing investment in agriculture is just one example of some sector development that you would be looking at. Workforce development was an important consideration pre-COVID. It became an essential consideration during COVID and post-COVID, making sure that you have the workforce to actually support the businesses that are here, and that they can, there's the talent and the capacity within the community to support business activity. Business development to me means working with the existing business base and supporting them so that they can continue to thrive in the community and grow. So it might be things like exporting, but it might be connecting them with locally and shop local programs. Again, our types of business development programming. It may be supporting training and those sorts of things so that businesses are on top of new trends and opportunities for their continued prosperity. Research and info management is, we were talking with Felicia earlier, it is not the sexy part of economic development, but it is really, really essential. Understanding the numbers and understanding the trends that are happening within the community are important for making good decisions about economic development activities and the municipality in general. But they're also important for communicating the benefit of investing, continuing to invest, or making new investments in the community. So things like demographics and industry profiles, all of those things are really important components of research and information management. Marketing and communications is your brand and having the information that's easily accessible, your website, all flyers, any information that you need to support good investment decisions that align with your goals and objectives. Resident attraction, I know that that's an important consideration for this council, but resident attraction is making sure that you have the places to put people, but also that you're looking at a balanced demographic profile. You've got some neighbors that have that skew with very old populations. That's not a workforce opportunity necessarily. So you want to make sure that you're attracting people to fill the roles that are here, but also to be consumers. So balancing all of those things are important considerations. And then finally, business retention and expansion. The best work you can do, again, it's not terribly sexy work, but those adding 1 or 2 or 3 additional roles within existing businesses is much easier to do than attracting those big fish. So if you can work with the existing businesses, understand what their opportunities are, understand what their challenges are, and help them to address them, you actually have a greater potential for seeing increased activity in jobs and investment within your community. So any questions on any of this? I encourage you to ask questions as we go. Yes, please.
I can speak about that. The fund that's very interesting, I went through this really well. But what I found last, and you just touched on here
A moment ago is the resident attraction. And I thought the piece I was missing was affordable housing. Because we talk about having a workforce, it's on, a workforce that is capable of performing the work at a younger age, but they also have to have affordable housing, which I think is an issue in every municipality, not just this one.
Yes. Yeah, and I would agree. So yeah, please jump in, David.
Well, we're gonna talk about it. It's a theme in the plan as we go through.
Oh, it's coming up later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit about, and what about agriculture? I read through your whole presentation. Is that going to be in here as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Oh, did I go too far? Yeah, so developing the strategy, it was a 3-phase process. So the research and analysis, we looked at existing strategies. We looked at what was happening at the county level, where you might be able to build on existing programs, take advantage of what's already happening, leverage those things. We looked at what's happening on a provincial perspective and how you would fit within that. We also did some comparative analysis, which David will talk about. So economic and demographic analysis to look at the trends, where things are going, and identify some strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats in that area. And investment readiness attraction or rather assessment, we looked at those things that are critical to be ready for new and existing businesses to make investment. And so we've provided some assessments in those areas. In phase 2, we started to talk to the people that are actively working and living and engaging with the business community within North Middlesex. And we did that in a number of ways. Interviews, we had a survey within the community, and we did focus groups with the Economic Development Advisory Committee. And I should say the Economic Development Advisory Committee was a really important resource for us in the development of the strategy. The findings and issues report was a approximately 100-page document that really laid out the framework of everything that we learned and saw through the research and analysis and the consultation. And it took us to a point where we could meet with the Economic Development Advisory Committee and identify those strategic priorities that really needed to be addressed within the strategic plan if we were going to be successful. And then finally, in phase 3, the strategic plan development, we prepared a draft strategic plan. We reviewed that with the Economic Development Advisory Committee. We had refined that, and then we've provided an implementation plan that your staff will work with the Economic Development Advisory Committee on actually implementing the strategic plan. That implementation plan also includes some aligned performance measures, which again, staff will need to take a look at and confirm which ones are going to be easy and impactful for your organization for reporting back on your progress towards the vision and mission that are outlined in the strategy. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to David.
Beautiful. Thanks, Aileen. So as Aileen mentioned, we did do a detailed look at the economy here and the demographic situation, because that's sort of foundational when you're developing an economic development plan such as this. So a few key highlights in this presentation, but if you want to read the full report, we do have it. It was provided to the advisory committee. So the good news is the population is growing in the community. If you look at the data provided by Stats Canada on estimated population growth between 2019 and 2023, we saw just under 5% growth in population. So that's good. It's kicking. It's better than the previous trend in the community. You see here, as Aileen mentioned, we did compare you to a bunch of other benchmark communities just to see how you compare. And you're sort of mid-pack in terms of comparing to these other communities in terms of population growth. If you look at the share of the population under the age of 20, which is a key demographic variable that we look at, and particularly in rural communities, we're seeing that number drop significantly. But you're holding up quite well. About a quarter of the population in North Middlesex is under the age of 20. And in fact, that's higher than both the Canadian and Ontario average. So we have seen some young families moving into the community in recent years, and that is keeping a larger share of the population under the age of 20. One of the other thing we were pretty key about in this plan was housing. If you don't have housing, if you don't have affordable housing, it's very hard to attract population. If you don't attract population, you won't have the workforce needed to work in the businesses here in the community. So we looked at sort of the historical trend, and the numbers were trending down compared to sort of history. But we do understand that there has been some housing development. And of course, you can see on the chart here that there's a fair amount of housing projects in the pipeline here in the community. This information was provided by the municipality. So, you know, the interest rate environment is difficult now. There's lots of challenges with the housing market. But the bottom line is, if we're not adding housing units appropriately priced for the workforce demand, it's going to be very, very hard to ensure you've got the workforce for the businesses here in the community.
Can I just ask you a question on that? You say affordable housing, and that's a term that's thrown around all over the place.
Yeah.
What is affordable housing?
So we think of it more as appropriate to the types of workers in the community.
Okay.
And the families in the community. So it's not affordable in the sense that it's, let's say, subsidized by government, which is another euphemism for affordable housing. But we want to make sure, for example, that we have, you know, in some cases, apartment units or multi-unit opportunities. And again, it's more challenging in smaller communities. But if you don't have housing that that can be accessed for 30% or less of household income, which is the standard we look for. If you're paying much more than 30% of household income on housing, you're not in a good position, and that's a stat that we use. Now, a lot of people do pay more than 30, but it's really not what we're looking for. So it's almost like you should be thinking about, you know, the sort of income profile of your community, and we have some of that data in the report, and saying, let's make sure we've got housing units coming online where at the income levels that are needed here in the community. So just a few more stats and then I'll turn it back to Aileen, but we looked at workforce participation. We wanted to see if there's opportunity to sort of squeeze more workers out of the existing population base. And you do have a higher than average, or at least at the time of the 2021 census, you had a higher than average workforce participation rate, about 68% of your 15 plus population, and that includes those 65 and older, were in the workforce. In the younger age cohorts, 80 to 85% were. So that's good news for the community in the sense that you've got a lot of people working compared to some of the other communities. If we think about Lambton Shores, which has a very large aging population, a much lower share actually in the workforce. And then we looked at the share of the workforce over the age of 55, because those are the folks that are going to transition out of the workforce in the next 10 years or so. Now, this does include farmers, and we know from the data that farmers basically don't retire, or they retire very late, sometimes well into their 70s. But if you look at this, you do have almost 1/3 of your workforce is 55 and older. And that's a ticking demographic time bomb, because when those folks retire, all of the businesses here in the community, where are they going to find workers? Yes, Smith.
Just interesting. The two charts don't seem to match up, because look at Lambton Shores, 52% are in the workforce, but only 20% are over the age of 55. Doesn't seem to match when you look at.
So this is not the age, this is the workforce. So
Right.
all of those old people are already retired. I use the term loosely because we're heading in that direction. But so this is the people that are actually working. 20% are over the age of 55 in Lambton Shores. So that means a lot of people are older and not working.
I would have thought that there would be a greater number in Lambton Shores over the age of 55 based on the number in the workforce. That's what I would have thought.
You could be right, but what this indicates to me is that there's already many of them are already retired. They're not in the workforce at all. And maybe it's a younger workforce because it's more tourism oriented, at least down in Grand Bend area. So I'm not sure why that would be, except to say, again, if they're all retired already, or a big share of them are retired.
I think
Yes, sir. Go
your
ahead.
point made about the farming communities.
Yep.
If you look at Southwest Middlesex, North Middlesex, very much farming communities.
Yep.
And so, yes, we're going to have a large number over 55 that are still employed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But the trick there is they're not employed in retail and
Right.
personal services and business service, other industries, right? They're mostly employed.
If anything, quite often they're employing younger people to help them.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Adrian,
That was exactly my point. Is a farmer actually employed, or is he an entrepreneur? Because he's not really either, is he?
So he or she is an entrepreneur, but from the labor force perspective, from Stats Canada, they're working. Even though they own the business or they're the farmer, they're employed in the agriculture sector. That's just the way they calculate it statistically. The other thing we looked at is, because you're not in isolation out here. You're very close to other communities. Obviously, London is the big example there. So what we see is a lot of people are opting to live in this community. They want to live in this community, even though they work in other communities. So 72% of your population as of the census, and that's among those that don't work from home or have but those that have a fixed place of work. So they go to work every day to an office or a manufacturing facility or a retail facility. Among that group, 72% leave the municipality. So the good news there is some of those folks might, if there's a job that comes available in the community, they might take that job and eliminate their commute. But the bad news is they can live anywhere in the region. And if this is not a great community to live, then some of those folks might leave and live closer to where they work. So you can see here, there's a high share across all of the benchmark communities that are commuting to other municipalities. So across the country, it's 41%. Across Ontario, it's 41%. But in our community here, it's 72% actually live here but work in an adjacent community. The little pie chart shows you where they work. And, the bulk of them are still in Middlesex County, 45%. But 28%, 27% work elsewhere in Ontario, and very few work outside the province.
But
So-
that ties back into affordable housing though, doesn't it? Because from my perspective, they would also have to have at least one or two reliable vehicles to transport themselves out to work. So that even increases the need for affordable housing.
Yeah.
Does it not?
Yes, and in that case, it's actually housing that's cheaper than the other communities, say London, right? Because if I'm going to live here, but I'm going to commute into London, the economics of it, or if I'm paying the same for housing, I might not make that decision. So that's a really good point because of the transportation related costs. We took a detailed look at the workforce. Of course, I won't go into it in great detail, but we're just trying to show here in this chart the difference between those that work here in North Middlesex versus those that live here. And that again, it's good to understand that profile, to understand who's leaving your community for work. But it's also, again, as we look to the future, some of these folks might be targets to stay in the municipality and work. So if you look at the healthcare sector, there's 404 that work here and 480 that live here. If you look at construction, the similar numbers as well. On the trade side, trade includes retail and wholesale. There's 410 that live here but don't work here, and those that work here 309. So you can just go down this list and see the difference. Of course, in manufacturing, we have lots of folks that live here but work in manufacturing, but we don't have a ton of manufacturing here. A little bit of manufacturing here, but not a ton. So a lot of those folks are leaving the community to work in the manufacturing sector, and the same with accommodation and food service. So that, again, that's another partially good news story. As we need to find more workers for that sector here in the community, we have 180 living here, even though we only have 97 in the workforce here in the community. So we also talk in the report about strategically important industries such as farming. Of course, that's the big one. 30% of all industry revenue of all sectors combined comes from farming. It also directly supports 22% of all your jobs here in the community. So that's an incredibly important sector. Healthcare, it's the second largest industry in your area by revenue. That includes assisted care, nursing care. Construction is a top employer as well, and it's also growing strongly, which bodes well when we're talking about a housing sector and investing in infrastructure. And then professional services tend to be less in smaller communities, so people will commute to the larger urban areas, but we have seen growth in the number of accountants and lawyers and professional service providers that actually are living and working here in the community. So that's good news. And also retail trade. We have seen growth in retail trade employment here in the community. So I'm going to turn it back to Aileen, and I'll come back to talk a little bit about the actual strategic priorities in a minute.
Thank you, David. So the consultation really helps to put some context around some of the numbers and the analysis that David has done. And we get to hear from the people that are living and working and interacting with the businesses and the other stakeholders. So we had a focus group meeting, as I mentioned earlier, with the Economic Development Advisory Committee. We did 15 one-on-one interviews with business representatives, county representatives, staff to get their individual perspective. And then we had 88 participants in the community survey. So that gave us some good ideas and good understanding of how they're experiencing all that analysis that David did. Yes.
In your community survey, was that in person or was that just online questionnaires?
It was an online survey.
Okay.
Yeah. The detailed analysis from that consultation is included in that key findings report. Okay. So I'm going to give you very high level the themes that we heard, the things that were recurring during our consultation. First of all, people that live and work here are very proud of North Middlesex, and they believe that North Middlesex has a lot to offer to residents and to businesses, which is fantastic. So we're starting from a good place. They saw some advantages and disadvantages to the location. Proximity to some larger centers is great if you want to be servicing some of these areas, but it's also removed from a 400 series highway, which means that just in time and some of those other areas of manufacturing strength in particular are not there. So, so a good and bad piece on there. Some people really appreciated the distance from the 400 series highway as the idyllic lifestyle, that sort of thing. But it is something that was a common theme that came up through our discussion. Infrastructure, there's a recognition that in order to grow, investment in infrastructure is required. And again, that was a fairly prevalent conversation. Population growth, almost 2-to-1. Everyone we spoke with tied the economic opportunities for North Middlesex to population growth in this area. And to your point with Councillor Cornelius, there was a lot of discussion about what the residential development would look like, how it would go forward, how North Middlesex could support the demand for residential development in the area. Land and buildings, there was a lot of discussion about the types of opportunities that they'd like to see in this area, but recognize that we need zoned and serviced land and vacant buildings to support that. And at this point, there's not sufficient supply in that area. Building community, we did hear a little bit of tension. It wasn't a huge overriding theme, but we did hear a little bit of tension about the one community versus another within the community, within North Middlesex, and rural versus small urban, some of those discussions. So it's just something to keep in mind as you're going forward. We did hear from a couple of the businesses that had been active in going through the development approvals process, that there could be some streamlining there. Sometimes it's just understanding the process and not appreciating what is required. But other times there was thoughts that it was unnecessarily prolonged. And so that was an area of consideration. Now, we hear that just about in every project we do. So we do take it with a bit of a grain of salt, but there's always ways that you can, at least when you're working with a prospective investor, help them to have an appreciation of what the process is that they're getting into and to have realistic expectations about what the process is going to look like, including the timelines. And then I think it's no surprise to you, the access to childcare and particularly discussion about enrollment at the high school were areas of concern about what the impact could be for workforce development, for resident attraction, and also for workforce development in general. Okay. Okay, so investment readiness assessment, OMAFRA in pre the last shuffle, and the British Columbia's economic development and Alberta's economic development over the years have developed an investment readiness checklist that they share with economic developers to look at how you can be best positioned to support new investment from existing businesses and investment from outside businesses. And so just at a high level, we looked at North Middlesex through that lens. So North Middlesex does have an economic development contact, someone that, if a business is looking for information that they can talk to. There is a designated planning contact. So they know who they could talk to about planning concerns and the planning and the development process. The OP review is underway. That's good news. The sooner you can get that in your back window and be able to speak, with some authority about where that's going to land, that would be very helpful. We do see a role for your economic development staff to be engaged in that discussion, in those plans, so that we're ensuring that the official plan is supportive of the business activity. And one of the things in the checklist is having a development approvals process that is shared in a graphic format, so it's easy to understand, with some generalized timelines. So you can expect for a straightforward case that it would take X number of days to get from this place to this place. Those sorts of things are not in place at the moment, and they're things that are included in the recommended actions going forward. On the resources area, again, there was, when we started the work in economic development coordinator role, and I understand there's some discussion about how that's going to happen going forward. And of course, Felicia is doing a yeoman's job in that area now. So that is there. Established utilities contacts. So Felicia knows where to go to get specific information that would help a business that has a question about utilities. There is a business association that supports the area, so businesses can network and speak and share their voice and their concerns to council. And there's an economic development advisory committee, and that is not always the norm in a community this size, so it's a very positive sign. Some of the things that aren't happening today, which are addressed within the strategic plan, is the development of a formal business visitation program. Just having a process that you might go through, and also on a regular basis connecting with particularly the key businesses within the community, so that they know that you are there to support them, so that they know where they can access help if it's required, or if they have a challenge, but also that you can learn about what are the opportunities and the challenges that they are facing, so that you can be informed and you can make good decisions going forward about what this policy decision will mean for their activity going forward. Industrial and commercial sites are required for investment. If you don't have a place to go, they're not going to invest here. So having that piece figured out is really important. And we do talk about that within the strategic plan. You have a community improvement plan. Again, for a community this size, it's not always the case. So that's wonderful to see. We did hear during the consultation that there's an opportunity to review the funding levels to make sure that they are staying in line with the increases in building expenses, that sort of thing. But also there may be an opportunity to tweak those somewhat to support your target sector areas and areas that you want to see activity. And then finally, on the communications area, you do have a Facebook page. There's a municipal website with information. There's a lot more detail that you could be providing within a community profile. It doesn't need to be a printed document. It can be online. And we have provided a detailed list of the critical data that would help investors make decisions that's been included in the economic development strategic plan document.
Okay, I'm going to go through the SWOT analysis really quickly because we want to actually get to the meat, which is what we're recommending. The SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's what it means. And it comes out of the consultations and the research that we did. So it's not just sort of pulled out of the air. These are based on the feedback that we heard. So the growing population is a strength. It does lead to this demand for housing. Your location is a strength, your agriculture sector. We heard municipal water infrastructure is a strength in some areas of the community. We have pretty good broadband access. There's more work to be done there. There's a good sort of sense of small town, rural community here. We talked about the pride earlier. Very high rate of entrepreneurship in the community, which again is a good thing from an economic development perspective. Resident focused services, and you do have a CIP, and we do have some recommendations around tweaking that. On the weaknesses side, the wastewater capacity was mentioned, housing supply, and the range of housing, making sure you've got it, as we talked about earlier. The distance to the 400 series highway, which Aileen mentioned, makes it a little more challenging when you're looking at, say, large manufacturing or large industrial projects. A lack of industrial land ready to go in commercial buildings is a challenge. The commuting workers, it could be considered a weakness, and you do have some retail leakage of people commuting into the other municipalities to shop. Planning guidelines, transit is a perennial challenge in smaller communities. Family services, as Aileen mentioned, around high school and childcare. The downtown or the commercial nodes, we think there's work that can and should be done there. We heard there's a low risk culture in this community. That's feedback from the people we talked to. So interesting to see if you folks agree with that or not. And then the workforce in terms of a challenge moving forward. The external stuff, the opportunities are what we see based on what's going on out there as opportunities that could apply here. And the threats are things in the external environment that could negatively impact your economic development moving forward. So the county does economic development, and we think based on the interviews and discussions that we had is that we can make better use and leverage what they're doing more here in the community. There is a growing interest in living and working in smaller communities. And I just heard today and in the last few days that the federal government is going to prioritize attracting immigrants to smaller communities in Ontario and across the country. So that's good news, again, in terms of helping with the workforce. Growing population across the county means there's general growth happening, and we should be able to harness that, take advantage of that. The younger population is really good news for the community. There is developer interest in residential development here in the community. We found that out during the process. And then this growth in hybrid and remote work and work from home, again, can be an opportunity for a community like this, as people can live in a pristine rural or small community setting, but also work for companies that are not located here. On the external threat side, there was quite a bit of concern around the high school. And you might not think that that's an economic development issue, but in the current context, it is. Yes, ma'am.
I think that was a past concern. I don't believe that's closure of the pod school is no longer a discussion with the school board.
Right.
In fact, we've just gone to the school board to get them to start preparing for the influx of additional students from the growth we're experiencing. So I would no longer suggest that as a threat.
Okay.
People listening, I wouldn't want anyone to think that that is the case currently.
Okay,
Because
good
that's
news.
certainly not the talk any longer.
Good news. Great news. Succession plans. Farmers are notorious for not having a plan in place for retirement or for handing off the farm either to a family member or non-family member. And we heard that was a challenge here as well. Corporate farming, there's lots of concern in some circles around what's happening on that front here, not only in this community, but across Ontario and much of the country. Higher interest rates are a threat. We can't do anything about it here in the community, but it does pose a risk to things like housing development. So it's good to see, even in the last few months, we're seeing interest rates ticking downward. The limited workforce, again, this is not just here. This is across the country. And if there becomes demand on that workforce, people are going to move to where they see the best opportunities. So a shrinking workforce could have impacts for smaller communities. The cost of building, we heard that was a bit of a challenge here. Aileen mentioned the competing neighborhood jurisdictions here in the community. We heard a little bit about that in the consultations. And then in the longer run, but we're seeing some impacts even in the shorter run, climate change and severe weather. So I'll give it back to Aileen to go through the strategic priorities.
So there's an awful lot of things that you can do in an economic development strategic plan, and we tried to boil those down to 4 areas that really would help focus the efforts to achieve economic prosperity for North Middlesex. So workforce development, resident attraction. So growing the population so that the labor force here is of a sufficient size to support the existing businesses. That would require addressing the demand for housing at all scales and resident services. So making sure that the services that residents need are also here so that they can live and work within the community. Investment readiness, making sure that all the resources, including the land and the building and the information, all of that is in the infrastructure, all of that is there to attract and retain in business investment. On the business and development side, working with and supporting entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, and small businesses, that existing base of business activity, and helping them to grow and thrive. And then finally, sector development. There are some key sectors here: agriculture, tourism, particularly with the coastline just next door, and building on that activity. Local resident services and specialized manufacturing are all areas that we see some opportunities for. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to talk about sector development for a moment, because we did discuss this at the committee, and we talked about not agriculture per se, but agribusiness.
Yes,
Um,
I agree. Yeah.
Secondary and tertiary activities that come from primary agriculture, because that's potentially where the growth is. We're farming as much land as we can farm now.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Yes.
And that goes back to slide 10. We talked about farming as a positive aspect. Now, was that primary farming, or that include secondary and tertiary industries as well? 30% of all industry revenue is farming. Was that primary, or is that also secondary and tertiary?
I'd have to check, but I think it's just the farming sector. It's not the
Just-
manufacturing sector.
And not things like farm gate, other economic activities on the farm, or secondary activities like an abattoir.
Yes, I think it would include an abattoir. I'd have to look at that specifically, but it doesn't. So if you look at this industry coding from StatsCan, there's farming, and then there's the food production, and that's broken into 100 different subsectors. But the farming is really the stuff that happens on the farm, and not the value-added processing. So, yeah, I think this is just straight farming. We do have some value added in the community, but not.
I think that's what we discussed at the committee, that
Yeah.
the opportunities rested a lot with potential value added.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
maybe we are getting the terminology a little wrong. When we talk about agriculture, we are talking about the value add and the secondary stuff as well.
So we've learned a lot, and we've identified some key strategic priorities, and then we want to put that into a framework. And so the strategic plan itself is broken into a vision, where that long-term objective, where we see North Middlesex in the future, the mission. So that is a current statement. What North Middlesex, what we are doing to achieve that, and who it's going to benefit, and why we're doing all of that. Goals and objectives are those higher level things that we're hoping to achieve with a little bit more specificity. And then the objective is the outcome from that goal. And so we'll walk through all of those. And then we have a series of actions within each of those areas. So the vision then that is put forward in the strategic plan is that North Middlesex will be a vibrant and growing community that has economic opportunity and supports residents' well-being. So it's fine to have lots of activity, but if it's not aligned with the well-being of the residents, that's not where we want to go. And it is that aspirational statement. The mission then of what we are doing and why is then we would be advancing economic opportunities for North Middlesex businesses and residents, and we'll be doing that through managed growth. The managed portion is very important, strategic investment, and targeted business development. Yes.
Just to use a cliche, if I may, where the rubber hits the road, strategic investment is investment that the municipality needs to make. Government,
Yes.
us.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly right.
I would like a better understanding of targeted business development. What does that encompass?
So
And who does that?
again, that's what North Middlesex is doing. So that's your economic development, your advisory committee, et cetera. And it's targeted to those sectors that we've identified as areas of opportunity. That doesn't mean that if someone else from another sector comes forward, you're going to say, sorry, we're not opening the door to you today. But it means that if you're going to specialize in things, if you're going to invest time in really understanding a sector, you're going to be looking at those sectors where you have the greatest potential for benefit for the municipality.
so there's lots of partners. The county's a partner, Community Futures is a partner. There's lots of partners, but the municipality has to take the lead on these opportunities, most of these opportunities. And we'll talk about some of them in a minute.
And the implementation plan will help you to determine who those partners are and who the lead would be. I think, David, you're
Sure.
taking this next one.
So let's go through these really quick, but these are the four goals that Aileen mentioned, and the objectives that follow under those goals are as follows. We want managed population growth because we want to have a larger local labor pool. We heard from many businesses that it's getting harder and harder to find workers, and this cuts across industry from agriculture and farming right through to retail and service industries here. And if you don't have those industries here, particularly on the services side, if people are constantly having to commute outside the community, it becomes a challenge moving forward. The growing population, another objective is that the growing population supports a greater range of commercial and public services. So if we have a growing population, we have a pool of workers to provide these services. And then under this, again, the objective is to have a range of housing to support population growth. That's a mix of housing, that's rental, that's own, that's expensive and reasonably priced. That's the vision here, or the objective. Under investment in readiness, North Middlesex has the infrastructure and data to effectively attract and retain business investments. Only one objective there. Under business development, North Middlesex's entrepreneurs and business community have the supports and resources they need to thrive and grow. Some of that is provided by the municipality. Some of that's provided by other partner organizations here in the community. And then on the sector development side, that we are proactively leveraging our strengths to develop the emerging opportunities in agriculture, and that includes pieces agribusiness as well, tourism, commercial services, and specialized manufacturing. And I do want to say that after 20 years of doing this, we think we put a plan together here that you can do. You have to resource it properly with staff and budget, but this is not completely out of reach. Some of the things might take a little time, several years to get implemented. But we really try to align our strategic planning, our economic development planning, to your capacity as a municipality to deliver. So that's just a point I wanted to make. And then this is me as well. So under managed population growth. So everything is a cascade, as Aileen said. What are your opportunities out here? What are the things you're going to do to in terms of goals, and how you're going to, what are the objectives? And then ultimately, what are you actually going to do? And those are the actions. So we believe you should have a population target. Doesn't mean every year you're going to exactly have the same population growth, but it sets a standard for growth that you want to see in the community. And that impacts everything from how many houses you're going to need, to infrastructure development, to service provision in the community. So we think you should consider establishing a range for population growth here in the community over the next 5 years. Align housing development with that target. So as I mentioned, the residential and the infrastructure side, we need to have the marketing materials to help attract the people to move into our community. We need a workforce attraction campaign. So working with industry to say, if we need certain kinds of workers, we can actually go out and promote our community for attraction of those workers. Many will come from Ontario. Some might be immigrants as well. Childcare services are absolutely critical. We talk about that in the findings and issues report. If you don't have adequate childcare services, you're taking a big chunk of the workforce out of the market. Many of those young women would like to work and can't because of childcare issues. Targeted entrepreneur attraction. A lot of people skip over this, but we have a lot of businesses, and 40% of them are heading toward retirement. So we want to make sure that as the owner of business X and business Y leave the community, we have entrepreneurs to take their place and new entrepreneurs to work on new opportunities in the community. And then it looks like number 7 is well underway, which is good in terms of boosting the high school enrollment. And then finally, here is the capacity to support that growth, permitting, infrastructure, et cetera, as we've talked about. So I'll also talk to goal number 2, and happy to take any feedback you would have. But under this goal, we have 10 related actions. We think you should establish and maintain a commercial and industrial land and building inventory. We heard that a lot in the consultations. We think that's something that could be done over time. You can have that inventory and be very clear about where you can see development, where the opportunities are. We also believe you need to identify new areas for development of employment lands. We believe there's a need for that based on the feedback we heard in the community. So just getting those areas ready for future development here in the community. Explore funding options for infrastructure. So there may be other ways to fund some of your infrastructure needs, and Aileen is more versed on that than I am. The website, we do believe, has to have all of this investment attraction data, and we've got in the document, we've laid out the pieces for the website. There's development all over the municipality. There's businesses all over the municipality, but we do like the idea of the priority commercial nodes where you're concentrating services and shopping within the municipality. Commercial design guidelines supported and incentivized with the CIP. We think you still have to continue to work on broadband availability, particularly in more rural areas. Monitor and inform on broadband deployment to make sure we're hitting our targets there. We believe you should be providing economic development training for staff and council. So a lot of times you have expertise in your economic development team, but the rest of council and staff don't necessarily understand, that wheel that Aileen spoke to earlier. And we think it's important. We've seen it in other communities that there's a broad understanding of what economic development is and why it matters for your community. Development approvals process flow and timelines. Again, Aileen spoke to this earlier, so I don't need to elaborate on that. And we've talked a number of times about collaborating with the county and provincial economic development programming.
So on the business development side, a structured business visitation program can be a huge project, or it could be very, very simple. And we think, in these early days of the implementation of the strategic plan, we're looking at something really simple where you've got a couple of standard questions and you sit down with a business owner or operator, preferably starting with some of those key sectors or major employers, and asking, what's working for you? What are those areas of opportunity? How can the municipality best support? And providing feedback to council on a regular basis. This year we met with 20 businesses. We met with 30 businesses. These are the themes that we're hearing so that you are making informed decisions based on those discussions. Providing an online database of resources that businesses could access and need, not all of them coming from North Middlesex, but again, pointing them in the direction of funding and exporting supports and all kinds of other things that they may need to be successful. Training and networking, the North Middlesex Business Association, that's a fantastic resource that should be used to connect with the business community and encourage those businesses to work together and get to know each other better so that they can be supportive of each other. Promoting the CIP, we heard that people were very proud that there was a CIP, but there's a number of businesses that weren't familiar with it. And that is an area for opportunity. We do understand that it was nearly fully subscribed this year, which is excellent news. But we would love to see you in a position where it is every year fully subscribed, or even you have so much demand that you're talking about, well, maybe we should be expanding it so that we can further leverage and support greater investment in the community. Supporting local business recruitment, so their activities to recruit workers to the community is important, and partnering with the workforce development partnership that's already existing, and the Elgin Middlesex Oxford Workforce Planning Board. Great resources that are already here. Again, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, but you need to be connected with their activities so that you can connect businesses and be part of those solutions. And then finally, we know that there's an official plan update happening. The economic development staff needs to be an advocate for what's going to work and what may not work so well for the businesses within North Middlesex. And again, circling back, that business visitation program helps you to be best informed to provide that feedback. So on the sector development, we identified 4 sectors, so agriculture, agribusiness, tourism, commercial services, and specialized manufacturing. We'd like to see that business and industry directory that you have that's existing, that maintained and utilized to its best resources. Like when an investor is looking at it, where to drop their dollars, where to land their business, they want to understand the business environment. So making that information available so that they understand what they're coming into is really important. But also identifying those holes in the inventory. Where are there gaps that need to be filled? Engaging with sector-based business associations, just having a general understanding of what's happening in the larger context of agribusiness. Felicia and I have been talking this week about the opportunities for the Middlesex Federation of Agriculture and the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. They're holding an economic development and agriculture session at the end of the month. They do that, I think it's every 6 months now. And where you're talking about where agriculture, agribusiness, and economic development intersect. And because those sectors are so important here, being part of those discussions would be really, really helpful. We think reviewing the community improvement plan to consider incentives in these target sectors would be very helpful. Understanding what those incentives are that would help them to make that next investment, to make that next step forward. Looking at, again, those complementary businesses and services that would support agribusiness and tourism, commercial services, et cetera. And then profiling the existing businesses in those target sectors. So just doing a little blurb on, did you know that, Fred's whatever, that they've been in the community for 20 years and that they supply across Ontario, that sort of thing. Providing that profile is a great boost to that business, but it also starts to tell the story of the business opportunity here in North Middlesex. So, is there a question? Okay, so the implementation plan, again, we reviewed this with Felicia today, but basically this is a tool that's more of an internal document that Felicia and the Economic Development Advisory Committee and ultimately staff and council would use to plan on an annual basis with your budgets and work plans. And it identifies who those key partners are that would be involved in the implementation of all those actions, what the time frame is, and we've made some recommendations on those things that we think should be short term, like within the first year, other things within year 2 and 3, and then longer term, year 4 and 5. But again, based on opportunities that present themselves during the life of the plan and funding that may come available or changing business environment, all of those things can happen in a 5-year period. Based on that, you may want to modify the time frame. The budget, a number of the things that have been recommended in the strategic plan do not cost a lot of money, but they do require resource, like the human resource, actually do the work. That business visitation program, for example, somebody needs to make the phone call, needs to reach out to the business, needs to sit down with the business, needs to identify what the themes are, needs to record those areas of those key themes that you're seeing over and over again. So there's some real time involved in that sort of thing. And then we've identified priority levels. Is it a nice to do? Is it a high importance, medium importance, or a critical priority area? Let's see a question, Lily.
Thank you. Who do you recommend then to implement this visitation program? Is it council, members of the committee? Is it staff? Who goes out and connects with the local businesses?
It very much varies on the community. In this community, based on what you've got here, I could see your economic development staff leading that and potentially bringing either the chair of the Economic Development Advisory Committee or a council member. In some communities, they try and discourage that. It's just the staff because they want to have an environment where they don't feel that there's going to be any, there's going to be any issues with confidentiality. So those are some discussions you will need to have. I've seen it work very effectively, where it is one staff member who is really building on those resources. But there's certainly areas where I could see another person participating to be, to better inform the committee, for example.
Thank you.
If I could just make some comments, and I wanted to, just because I feel that initially to council and maybe members of staff and the public, this might seem massive. And, we have a very small staff and we've got a lot on the go. But it just struck me as you were going through it, a number of things. Number one is that a number of these initiatives are already ongoing.
Yes.
We are working on a daycare at Park Hill. We're already having discussions with an individual would like to put something in Elsa Craig. So we'll continue to work with them. OP is already under review. We're looking at land use changes, looking for employment lands for commercial, maybe commercial nodes, potentially industrial as well. But I think what is very interesting is the business visitation and what could be gathered out of doing an initiative like that. Yes, it's asking a few which could be very beneficial questions, but it's also, in my mind, building a toolkit that we could then bring out to the community of what's available for those business owners that is already there. What is already available as far as under the CIP that they're not aware of? What's already out there under the Middlesex Workforce Development Partnership? What programs are already there that they don't already even know about? Bring those to them, have pamphlets, have information. Let them know about the OP review. What is happening? What do they need? Do they need to expand their lands, expand their operations? Do they need more lands? Do they want to change in designation themselves? And it could be a part of developing your database, creating your directory of businesses. What do they have to offer? Do we actually know everything they have to offer? And could we update our database from that? And our website then could be, as a result, updated from those visitations. So in just a short amount of time, you can see that we're already doing a lot, and implementing one of your initiatives being the visitation could also capture in a lot of these other things that could be done at the same time. So it's not as scary as it may appear. And I would suggest, the visitations would be, certain, if you try to do 4 a month, how quickly you could establish a lot of this information and how beneficial that would be as part of our official plan review and CIP updates and ongoing policy review. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions right now? Comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to just build on the comments from our CAO. And I agree, there's a number of synergies at play here. Bringing forward this economic development plan, as we look at our official plan, as we refresh our strategic plan, I think is really important. I think your message you gave us is we can't afford to take a laissez-faire approach, right? We have to have a hands-on, given the competitive environment, which may require investments that we have to make of human resource or financial. But we need to look at this more as a 10-year call to action than as immediate payback. So we may be planting the seed, so to speak, talking about agriculture today, and not reaping the benefits for several years down the road.
If I can build on that, Councillor Irwin's right. Economic development is a long-term thing. You're not going to see immediate, well, perhaps, in a perfect world, you see something immediately, but most of these activities are long-term gains, and you build capacity, you build layer on layer and layer, and you become stronger and more competitive and more supportive. And it all builds upon each other.
Go ahead, Councillor. Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Can you give us an example of a community that has completed your economic development strategy and had achieved some success? And what does that success look like?
Sure. So first of all, I'll start by saying that every economic development strategic plan that we do is very specific to the community. So that's where I would start. We recently completed a strategy for the municipality of Port Hope. And in Port Hope, they were looking at a number of areas in the film sector, for example. And there was a lot of communication within the business district, the commercial sector, but whether or not it was a positive or a negative because businesses were closed or the streets were closed. We recommended as part of the strategy that they do a mini analysis of the economic benefit of that, and they've put that into place, and they have found that there is benefit to their community, and so now they are they have a more supportive business community, and they're looking at even more ways to benefit from that activity. That's one example that came off the top of my head.
Yeah, so we did a plan a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, for a community called Miramichi in New Brunswick. And a key focus there was population growth because they had a lot of similar dynamics, demographic dynamics. Last year, they attracted 350 immigrants into not a large community, a little bit larger than North Middlesex, but still they've put a focus on that. They deliberately have worked on people attraction. They're seeing apartment buildings going up to support that, and other types of residential housing. So that's one other example of a community, a smaller community, taking doing the population growth because they see it's so important to the broader workforce strategy. Now, I was in that community just a few days ago, and they've still got challenges, and so population growth is an ongoing issue. As long as you have every year lots of people retiring, you've got to make sure you've got those workers. So that's another example of taking what we've recommended and turning it into an action.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I would just make comment that I think there is an opportunity as well with partnership. The county with economic development, they're doing some quite large changes going into next year. And so we'll see what they end up being. But I think there's opportunities there to increase working with the county as well before it. So Councillor Irwin,
Your worship, do we need a motion to receive this plan?
we do need a motion to receive this.
Yes, I would like to make that
You're
motion.
making that a motion, a seconder, second by Councillor Dagan. Don't look at me like that. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. All right, our next item of business is first is department reports, and Brandon, your first report on snow removal.
Mayor Ott, members of council, the report in front of you for the snow removal from our facilities is our annual tender that goes out. The pricing we received this year, we received it from 2 different contractors. So the pricing that we did receive was fairly consistent with last year's numbers. We did see a slight increase on the shared service center as well as the Park Hill Fire Hall. But overall, our facilities are basically in line with where they were last year. So staff are quite happy with that. So the recommendation on the report is to award the contract for the shared service center and the Park Hill Fire Hall to All Seasons Maintenance and Landscaping, and to award the rest of the properties outlined in the report to All Care Tree Services. So if anyone has any questions on the snow removal tender, feel free to ask.
Questions? Councillor Nelson?
Brandon, where's All Care Tree Services? Where are they located?
So they are located on, I believe, Glasgow Road. The contractor is Kevin Wiseman.
That's his.
Typically what happens with our snow removal contract is the contractors will ask if they can park their equipment at the rear of the arena to maintain the lots in Park Hill. We allow them to do that, so they do stay somewhat local. So
I just have one more comment, and that is that my understanding was that when Public Works got a truck with a snowplow blade on the front of it, that they're going to utilize that for some of our facilities as well. Is that still the case or have we abandoned that?
So through the mayor to the councillor, currently the public works will be doing some of the smaller lots, I believe, but our larger facility lots require a tractor with like I'd have to look at the equipment list, but it is quite a large size plow on the front of it in order to do our parking lots. So currently that is the lots that we're contracting out.
Thank you.
Counselor Irwin, do you have comment?
Counselor Canelson asked my question.
Ask that question? Okay. Any other questions on this? If not, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Counselor Daigle, second by Counselor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Brandon. The second one is a report from Felicia, and that's on the CIP application.
Thank you, your worship. So Mayor Ropp and members of council, the report in front of you is regarding Goxthorpe Farms, their third and final CIP application for their off-grid bunkie project. And it is my recommendation that we grant the $5,000 to Goxthorpe Farms.
Any questions from council on that? Counselor Daigle?
Thank you. Is this 5,000 on top of the two payments they've already received? So we're looking at $8,500 or
That's correct.
8,000?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
I'm glad to see the CIP program being used. We put it out there. So any other questions on this? If not, we have a recommendation to support. Counselor Daigle, Counselor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. The next report is from Alan, and that is on the council schedule for 25.
Thank you, your worship. I've put together a report with the suggested schedule for 2025. Small note, this year I was able to squeeze in 2 meetings in January, which in the past has been hard to do due to the New Year's date and how it goes in the schedule. It does not conflict with any of the known major conferences. Another thing of note is that none of the special meetings have been proposed at that point in time, and that we don't actually have the next holiday season schedule proposed at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council on this? Counselor Canelson.
Alan, did I understand you correctly then that the budget meeting may still be scheduled?
Through your worship, yes.
Okay, my other question is, and I want to direct this to the person who assembles the agenda, is that quite often the meeting in July or August, there's only one in that particular month, is fairly extensively long, sometimes 5 or 6 hours. And I'm wondering, is it beneficial then to have another shortened meeting, or are we going to continue to extend these hours for that one meeting that we have?
Through your worship, with that, we had a little bit of an abnormal business schedule this last year, and we did end up having an extra special meeting to cover some extra items this summer.
Well, my reply to that is that in the number of years I've been here, it's been pretty consistent that one of those 2 meetings is fairly lengthy. So that's what my thoughts are.
So in light of that, are you proposing that we would try for 2 meetings in one of those months at least?
Either that or we shorten the agenda. Yes.
Okay. Well, if there's business to do, there's business to do, right? So, okay. But Counselor Nerda.
The questions have been answered.
Okay. Counselor Irwin,
Move the report, your worship.
moving the report?
Yeah.
Seconder, Counselor Nerda, in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next business is Committee of Adjustment. And so we got to move, we need a motion to move from regular meeting. Counselor Daigle, second by Counselor Nerda, all in favor? Committee of Adjustment, and the first one, just a minute here. Notice a public meeting to consider MV 14-2024 located at 34751 Brinsley Road. Do we have the applicant present? Would you like to come up, sir? It's up to you. It's up to you. Okay. All right. Ashley, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Ropp. So the subject lands are located at 34751 Brinsley Road in the Hamlet settlement area of Brinsley, and they are surrounded by rural residential and agricultural uses, as well as an institutional use, which is the Brinsley United Church located to the south. The lands are approximately 2.63 acres in size and contain a one-story single detached residential dwelling that is approximately 7.7 meters or 25.26 feet in height when you measure that from grade to peak. The property owners are proposing to construct a new 1,517 square foot, one-story detached garage for personal storage purposes, and they require relief from the North Middlesex zoning bylaw to do this. The proposed detached garage would be located adjacent to the existing dwelling, which is classified as partially in the front yard and partially in the side yard of the property. So it's proposed to be located just where my cursor is here. And I'll bring up the site sketch as well. So the square is where it's located. So anything that's in front of this front lot line here, or the front wall of the main building, between that and the front lot line, is considered to be in the front yard. So a portion of the structure will be in the front yard, technically speaking, and a portion will be in the side yard, which is permitted. The owner has explored alternative locations on the property, but has determined that due to the existing elevations, the location of the private drain, and the location of the existing dwelling and septic, the subject lands are limited in where the proposed garage could be located. Additionally, relief from the maximum permitted height of the structure is required, so a car lift can be installed, and to match with the roof line of the existing dwelling to maintain a visual cohesiveness. So these are the building plans here. So it's a two-car garage. So a maximum height as measured from grade to peak of 5.5 meters is permitted under the North Middlesex zoning bylaw, whereas 7 meters is proposed, which equates to a difference of 1.5 meters or 4.93 feet. No comments or concerns were noted from circulated agencies. Emergency services did note that if the future use of this structure is changed for other purposes, they should be consulted for comment. However, staff note that the zoning would not permit for a use like a home industry in the structure, and it will have to be used solely for personal storage purposes. No formal requirements or no formal comments were submitted from neighboring landowners prior to the submission of this report. We did have one neighboring farm owner reach out to the building department just to ensure that the grading and drainage patterns of the area won't be impacted. This is something that I put on their radar to review a little more closely at the time of building permit issuance. And I will note that these comments were not formally submitted to staff. Staff are of the opinion that the minor variance meets the 4 tests outlined in Section 45 of the Planning Act, which are outlined in greater detail in my report, but we can summarize them at a high level by noting that staff have reviewed the location of the lands, context of the development, and the existing characteristics of the surrounding area. And we are of the opinion that the proposed structure is not anticipated to negatively impact neighboring properties, the character, the streetscape, or the sight lines. The structure will also be comparable in height and scale, although slightly shorter than the existing dwelling that's on the property currently. Staff are therefore of the opinion that the proposed variance should be approved with the condition that the relief only applies to the garage as shown on the site plan submitted with the application, meaning not to any future structures, and that the structure should be limited to 1 story in height.
Thank you, Ashley. This time, is there anything you'd like to answer as the applicant? Nothing to add? Any comments from public on this application? Seeing none, questions from the committee? Councilor Canellis.
My question is for the applicant. Being somewhat familiar with this property, is this garage not fairly close to the drain that's there? That big, there used to be an open ditch that was enclosed?
Yeah, come forward, please. If you can use the microphone, please, to answer.
We addressed this issue with the Sauble Bayfield. They were involved and I forwarded you the email. I don't know if you have it or not. They had, or you could just read the email. It's laid out with an MTE drawing and the drain location. I don't know.
Ashley, do you want to
have a
add
copy
to
of
that?
that?
Yes. I can just address it verbally, though, that Sauble Bayfield noted no concerns with the application and that the building department will review grading and drainage prior to building permit issuance.
Well, I understand that. My question is, how close is the garage to that drain?
Do you have that drawing? That's not the updated one that I sent off to Sauble Bayfield.
Because you put like a 3-foot pipe in there or something, didn't you?
Yeah, 36-inch tile. We're
Yeah.
7.5 meters away.
Oh, okay, all right. That's
And
what-
no part of the shop's any closer than 7.5 meters.
Okay,
Do you want to see the
No,
Wrong.
okay, 7.5 meters, that's fine.
Okay.
I knew it was close. I didn't know how close.
Yeah, Sawable Bayfield was concerned with, they wanted to make sure that there would be enough room to maintain or repair the drain in the future. So I had my engineer go over and plot the drain with the shop, make sure there's enough setbacks and enough room to repair the drain in the future if it ever needs to be repaired.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on this application? We have a recommendation to accept this application, moved by Counselor Irwin, second by Counselor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. We need to adjourn the meeting from the Committee of Adjustment. Need Counselor Canellison, Counselor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. All right. Our next is a public meeting planning act is the application ZBA 11/2024 located at 84 Queen Street. And Cindy, if you'll come up. Yep. All right. Ashley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. The subject lands are located at 84 Queen Street within the urban settlement area boundary of Elsa Craig. The lands are irregularly shaped and approximately 2.66 acres in size, and they're currently vacant of any land or of any buildings and or structures. The lands are designated as residential in the North Middlesex official plan, as well as presently zoned residential density 2 with a hold provision in place. The purpose of the subject application is to remove the hold from the property to permit for the proposed 21-unit single-story seniors townhome development to proceed. The original hold was placed on the property when the original zoning to permit the townhome dwellings was approved by the municipality in 2018. My report goes into greater detail on the history of the original zoning and hold removals for the single detached dwellings that front onto Queen Street. However, removal of the hold on this particular townhome block is contingent upon execution of a site plan control agreement and the completion of a public site plan process. The site plan has been approved and the agreement has been executed with the CAO's delegated authority as required by the provincial government. Additionally, the owner's agent has confirmed that the public process requirements have been fulfilled both formally and informally through various phone calls, messages, and meetings with the agent, engineering staff, and abutting residents, as well as with members of council. Staff note, in addition to the informal public consultation, 3 formal public meetings have also been previously held, and this meeting this evening will also constitute a 4th public meeting. No concerns were noted by circulated agencies. One letter of opposition received from Ryan and Megan Lee, who own 97 Queen Street, provided concerns regarding traffic and speeding, sufficient parking, and a lack of services for an older demographic. Their letter of opposition was provided to council in the agenda package for the review prior to this evening. And staff would like to clarify that the zoning on the property that permits for the townhome dwellings was previously approved in 2018. The purpose of this evening is strictly to remove the hold so they can proceed with construction. Factors mentioned in the letter of opposition have been previously provided for and considered by staff prior to bringing this hold to council this evening. As council is aware, the CAO does have the authority to remove holds in North Middlesex. However, to provide additional transparency to members of the public, the CAO has requested that the removal come before council. Based on the reasons outlined in greater detail in my report and on the summary I have just provided, staff are satisfied that the required criteria have been met, and we are recommending that the hold be lifted from the property.
Thank you, Ashley. Is there anything you'd like to add at this time?
Nothing I'd like to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comments from the public on this application? Seeing none? Questions from council? Councillor Canellison.
How soon are you going to start building?
As soon as you say go, we have the shovels ready.
All right.
Any other questions, comments? I have a couple of comments, and one is that I've received a lot of inquiries on this happening. And so it's good to see this happen because there are people waiting to see it happen. So I'm glad to see that. The other question I have to you, just for people who want to know what it's going to be like, is this similar to what you've built at Park Hill and Strathroy and other places?
It is, yes. It's going to be exactly the same. It's going to be 21 units, but interiors are the same, exteriors are the same. So if people want to see what they're going to get, they can drive to Park Hill, Strathroy, Ilderton, Petrolia, anywhere we have them. It is going to be exactly the same.
Thank you. Perfect. Councillor
I
Canellison.
have one more question. Are these rental units or for sale units?
They're rental units, yeah. So
And
with
what-
our current demographic that they're.
And what would the rental rate be?
we haven't released that yet until we have
Oh.
our final construction costs.
Oh.
Do you want me to put your name on the waiting list, Council Knussen?
Well, you know, I don't know if I can afford you.
Okay, let's bring it back. Counselor Irwin.
Yes, you are. Just in terms of the issue of traffic calming, I think that issue is more contingent upon ourselves as a municipality than this particular development. And it certainly is an issue we have discussed.
Yep.
As municipality on the stretch of Queen Street, and hopefully one that we will be getting a report back shortly in regards to.
Well, I do have to say that in Park Hill, I'll speak for that one, that it's a great community within the community. And so, yeah, so look forward to it. If there's nothing else, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councilor Irwin, seconded by Councilor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council. And I'd also like to point out that staff has been amazing to deal with on this project. So that's been very much appreciated.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is a public meeting to consider application ZBA 21-2024, 1069 West Corner Drive. And are you coming up, Paul? Okay. Okay, Ashley?
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. So the subject lands are located at the southeast intersection of Prance Road and West Corner Drive, and they have a municipal address of 1069 and 1127 West Corner Drive. Just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. Surrounding uses are predominantly agricultural in nature, and the area is characterized by large agricultural lots, primarily used for cash cropping and livestock operations. A portion of the lands are regulated by the Asable Bayfield Conservation Authority, just shown in the red hatching on the map there. The subject zoning bylaw amendment application will fulfill a condition of the severance application with the file number B2 2024, which was approved by the committee on February 7th of this year. The severance will reverse an inadvertent merger of original township lots, and the property is currently zoned general agricultural A1 and environmental protection EP. As council is aware, the North Middlesex zoning bylaw states that where multiple zones exist on a property, despite in this case, in particular, where both zones permit for the agricultural use to continue, each zone is evaluated against its own criteria. As such, the application will strictly be rezoning the agricultural portion of the severed parcel of the consent from general agricultural to a site-specific general agricultural to recognize the agricultural zone area of the property. The required zone area is 39 hectares, whereas on this property, approximately 30.41 hectares of agricultural zoned land is present. And on the retained parcel, similar to that, it will be a site-specific general agricultural zone. And again, their zone area for the agricultural portion is 35.99 hectares, again, where 39 is required. The retained parcel will also be rezoned to prohibit the establishment of residential dwellings and to address minimum distance separation setback requirements. This is largely due to the hog barn that is shown in the red outline there. No changes are proposed to the environmental protection portion of either the severed or retained parcel, and additionally, no change of use is proposed for the property either. No concerns were raised by the circulated agencies. Emergency services will work with the applicant to ensure that the appropriate municipal addressing is in effect. This is also a standard condition of the severance, and no public comments were received. For reasons outlined in greater detail in my report, we are satisfied as staff that the zoning bylaw amendment is appropriate, and we're of the opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement and in conformity with the Middlesex County official plan and zoning bylaw, and official plan of the county and municipality. All other conditions imposed by the consent still apply and have to be fulfilled to finalize this. Again, this is just addressing one of those conditions. And the recommendation is that council receives my report for information and that the associated implementing bylaw is approved and read a first, second, and third time this evening.
Thank you, Ashley. At this time, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Worship Council. I have nothing to add.
Nothing to add? Is there any comments from the public on this? Seeing-
I will just point out to council, sorry, that the only other person present is the owner of the property.
Yeah, I'm aware. Thank you. I do have to still ask that though. Okay, any questions from council? Councilor Irwin?
Just for clarification, because the deputy mayor is not here, where is the zigzag lot outline that you've mentioned? I don't see one here.
Through Mayor Rupp. So originally the consent application did propose to do a zigzag, just kind of out where this barn is and cut back into the original township lot fabric and then cut back in at the rear portion of the property. So I believe that was a previous staff member's interpretation of best practice there. However, upon further review, we felt that it would be inefficient to create a zigzag lot line. So we are recommending that it be straightened out, which was approved with the consent, and the zoning will implement that lot line straightened out the area.
That would make the deputy mayor happy.
Yes.
It's good to have someone speak for him when he's not. Any other questions, comments on this? Seeing none, we have a recommendation to approve. What's your wish? Counselor Daigle, seconded by Counselor Irwin. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you,
next-
council. That's my only matter.
Thanks, Paul. Our next item, we have to leave the quarter revision. We'll have to move on, I guess, to committee reports, correct? Yeah. All right, so committee reports, Lake Huron Primary. Nothing there. ABCA, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, we are able to decrease the budget increase to 3.9. The driver being wages and the asset management levy that we all have to pay.
Thank you. Any questions for ABCA? Blue Water Recycling, Councilor Keogh isn't here. Economic Development.
We had a meeting October 17th. We had a great presentation from the county on their CIP programs. We have a North Middlesex Business Association event tomorrow about Canva. So you can contact Felicia if you have any questions on that. And we had a great presentation by Mr. Nick Ince for a new event that he is proposing next summer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Economic Development? No questions? Okay, Local School Advisory.
Your worship, our next meeting is scheduled for a week Thursday on the 14th at 6 o'clock. The agenda went out today.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for anyone? Seeing none? The Rec Committee. Okay,
Sorry, your mic wasn't on, but the next meeting is on the 19th, correct?
you're too late. You're too late with that. Okay, Policy Review Committee. No, go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. You're the
Well,
chair.
there's the minutes there from a previous meeting.
Yep.
And then 2 policy updates that we are putting before council. One is for the gym membership. That is just to bring our staff, not non-union staff, in line with union staff on the break and rate. And the video monitoring is, I think, for legal obligations.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, so through the mayor to council, the update on the video monitoring was just to add more titles to who can access the footage. Obviously, we're expanding our video surveillance into our public works yard, which previously weren't considered. So it's just a formality of adding some titles to some staff.
Okay, any questions on that for Councilor Nerda?
I have one question with regards to the fitness membership. Did we offer staff reimbursement when we had the Y?
Brandon?
So through the mayor to the council, yes, previously we offered 50% membership to staff through the Y.
Thanks, Brandon.
Any other questions? Councilor Canelson?
Yes, when you talk about non-union employees, does this also apply then to our volunteer firefighters?
I can't answer that question right now.
Okay, thank you.
I would say so. I would think it does because they're non-union staff.
I can't talk about it now. We had a closed meeting last night.
Just a minute. Alan, do you want to?
I believe this matter would be discussed at a different point in time.
Correct. We'll get clarification. We'll have to get clarification. All right, those are the what's brought forward to be approved. What's council's wish? Do you want to do them one at a time?
Sorry, Your Worship, I just had one question on the video
Okay.
policy, and then I'm happy if we do them both.
Okay,
And my question is about signage. And how are we signing it? And how do we currently sign other locations where there are video cameras?
So through the mayor to the councillor, we do require notice to go up to the public that the premise is under surveillance. We do have video monitoring signage that is currently up at all of our facilities that have video cameras. In order to use it, it's a requirement. So we do have that, and we are looking at kind of updating and customizing it to North Middlesex as well. So.
Follow up, Your Worship, through you. And the signage is prominent and is more than one sign per location.
That is correct. As you enter the facilities, I believe every single facility when you come through the door has the video monitoring sign there, as well as other locations. I know pavilions have them mounted there as well. So.
okay, Councillor Kennels.
Yes, before I vote on the gym membership policy, I'd like to know exactly what I'm voting on, because we don't know if the volunteer firefighters are included or not. We don't know. So I don't think I personally can't support that. And I would make a motion that we defer that policy at this time until we get an answer to that question.
Are you making that a motion?
Yes, I am.
Is there a seconder for
I'll
that?
second that.
You're seconding it? In favor of that? Okay, that's carried. We'll defer that one to get clarification. Okay, so on the on the video monitoring policy. Okay, we need a motion. Councillor Irwin, Councillor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. So that one's carried, and we'll get back and get clarification on the other. Fire committee.
Yep. We got a report from Station Chief Jones yesterday that I guess the order or the specifications for the fire apparatus is 90% complete. So that'll be coming forward soon. Chief Jones has also worked on the fire pamphlet complete to what happens after a fire or a situation. And the fire master plan will be coming to us in one of the meetings in December. And I don't know if I've missed anything else. If anyone else was there, councillors, mayor, anything I missed?
Well, I think we did discuss something that's going to the policy committee on Friday.
Yeah,
believe-
but was that unclosed? That we talked about that and just wondering.
Yeah, but I didn't say anything other than just
Okay.
something that's going to the policy committee.
Yep.
That which will come to council
Right.
in the future to help us. with
No,
things.
that's why I didn't address it because it was
Okay.
close. Thank you.
Any questions for the fire committee? Seeing none, budget committee, is there anything not right now? Nothing new?
Nothing at this point, Your Worship. We'll be getting together in the next several weeks.
Community Development Fund. Well, we're going to be meeting.
Community Development Fund, there will be a meeting, is scheduled for the 13th, 9 o'clock in the morning to go over the outline of the process and the requirements for the grant. So that we can ensure that it's being implemented in an updated way to ensure the best benefit to the community.
Councillor Irwin.
Just on that issue, Your Worship, through you, I am getting some questions now on the grant and the granting process. So I understand there may be some updates out of that meeting. Would they be just prominently displayed if they're already after the meeting? Do they have to come back to council? I'm getting a lot of questions on that now because we're getting into the granting season.
To Your Worship, it would certainly be my intent that they come back to council for acknowledgement, if not approval. And that information then would be available on all their standard methods, website, social media, and provided likely to anyone who's made application as well.
Supplemental, Your Worship, and that's fine. I agree they should come back to council. However, our next council meeting is not till the 20th. Does that mean we'll extend the period of the grant application if there are changes?
To Your Worship, again, I don't know that any of the items that we're suggesting really change whether people apply or not. So I'm not sure the deadline for submission is going to be changing, only a bit of the process. So at this point in time, I don't see that being extended.
So, yeah, I think they should go ahead and make their applications, fill them out the way they always have, and we'll go from there. Okay. Anything else on that? We have the OPP, but Deputy Mayor isn't here. Go ahead.
About applicant's application to make sure that they read the directions over carefully and fill it out and provide financials and fill it out exactly to what is required of them.
Good point.
Your worship, I did attend the OPP meeting with the deputy mayor.
Okay.
So I can just outline a little bit. They did set the stage for their first budget for the committee, which will be coming back to this to implement as part of our budget for our percentage of that. And kind of looked at their terms of reference moving forward. I'm sure the deputy mayor will provide more of an update, but that was their very first meeting.
So I do have a question. Is there any focus there towards the county and all the lower tiers getting together to talk about enforcement, OPP enforcement, and the concerns it's had?
They did have a presentation from the staff sergeant, and he did provide an overview of the policing that has occurred in Middlesex County. As far as the concerns, certainly I believe that the staff sergeant will attend all of the meetings, and our representative could take any concerns that we had as a council or as a community back to the board to be considered at that at any meeting.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask is I'm hoping that the county puts time in this coming year to look at that, to work with the lower tiers, to talk about enforcement and what's it look like to get more enforcement. You know, is there a cost to more enforcement for these areas where we have the challenges? And I'd like to see county be involved with that as well, because a lot of them are on county roads. A lot of the speed issues are on county roads. Not all, but a lot are. So, okay. Correspondence. Blue Mountain, supporting the OGRA recommendation. Received. Moved by Councillor Daigle. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Irwin? In favor of that? Carried. Thank you. St. Catharines, supporting the AMO Green Roads pilot project.
Question, please. Can somebody tell me what bioresin is what they're talking about putting on the roads instead of asphalt products, oil based?
Jaden, do you have any information on that?
Through your worship, sorry, I'm not familiar with bioresins or this particular
Okay.
initiative.
Go ahead.
Either way, I'd like to have us support this. Anything that can improve our roads, we need to do.
I'd kind of like to know what it is before I'd support it. That's a personal thing. Councillor Canellison.
Yes, I do remember, I think it was dopamine, dolphin or something like that, and killed all our monarch butterflies, so I'd like to know what it is as well.
I would be willing, if we could find that information out, what it actually is they're talking about, I would certainly consider we could move that. We could defer this to the next meeting. Okay. Okay. Move to defer it. Okay. Aurora Fair Share Initiative. You're on a roll.
Again, it's to do with roads and getting the other levels of government to pay.
I'm not disagreeing with you. You're moved to support that. Seconded by Councillor Nerda. In favor of that. Carried. Middlesex London Health Unit meeting summary for October 17th. Any comments on that? Other and urgent business. We did have one item. Who's going to do that? Carolyn?
Thank you, Worship. This is a matter that has been ongoing for some time. Members of council asked that it be moved ahead, and that is happening. It's with regards to a closure of a road allowance, Prince William Road Allowance. That process is continuing to move forward. The first step was to get a proper legal description of lands, which has been determined through legal. The next step is to have a discussion with the property owner that will be receiving the lands with regard to the cost of the survey that will be necessary to specifically identify the lands that will be transferred, as it doesn't is not the entire road allowance in itself. So that conversation will be had in hopes that at either the next meeting or a very future meeting that we'll be bringing back a report to council to close the road and to declare it surplus so that it can be transferred to the adjacent property owner.
Okay. Is there any questions on that? I think it's just showing that the process is starting, right? Any other business? Okay, go ahead, Carol.
Your worship, we did have a matter, a few items ago, and I don't, I apologize that this is out of order, but we have our HR, coordinator here, and she has advised that with regards to the gym membership, under the policy committee, that does not include the firefighters at this point in time. So if that was to be included, that would have to be a change.
Okay, so we have that information that does not include the fire.
That is correct. That hasn't been the case in the past, and then this policy does not include them either.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to put that back on the table? And you're making that a motion? To that,
Just for clarification, what are we voting on?
this is on the gym membership.
To include the fire?
It does not. This policy that's bringing forward does not. Go ahead.
If I can just, for council's information, if you recall, particularly in the Park Hill Hall and fire station, there is quite a bit of equipment that's been made available to the firefighters for use. That's gym type equipment that is made available. The chief isn't here, but I am under the assumption that would be available to both members of both stations to use, and that would be at no cost to them.
Okay, so we have a motion now to approve that. Seconded by Councillor Irwin. In favor of that. Carried. Okay, thank you. Is there other business?
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
no, I had Councillor Daigle and then Councillor Irwin. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to the director of, what do you call it? Community Services. Is there been any progress on the Old Town Hall, on our share of things that will have to be done on the building?
So through the mayor to the councillor, we have had brick repointing done. That has been completed. In terms of the electronic sign, we have had the existing one removed. We have the new sign in the sign installer's hands. We are just waiting for a concrete foundation to be poured for it to support that sign, and we're hoping to have it by the end of the month here. So
Thank you very much.
You heard it here, hoping to have it by the end of the month. But Councillor Irwin.
Thank you, worship. I'll just leave that other matter where it rests. Want to extend the invitation, and a more formal one will go out later this week. We just got confirmation today for the Environment and Sustainability Working Group for a tour of Try Recycling for October 28th at 10 to 12. It'll be a joint presentation from the BRA and one of maybe the last chance to meet Francis and Try Recycling. Yes.
You said October 28th.
I said November 28th.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm caught in the time loop here. November 28th. Good catch.
Members of council, I did a previous report suggesting November 21st. So you may have that in your calendars already, but the date was amended to be the 28th at the same time being 10 o'clock.
Yes, if I can add to that, your worship, the time was amended because there are 6 communities involved, 6 councils will be invited and senior staff. You will see in the invitation that goes out, not asking for a commitment early so that they can prepare the site. The site can hold a lot of people, but they want to be able to prepare for the tours on the site itself.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Councillor, will you be providing transportation to the site?
For you, absolutely.
Any other business? No other business? I would make comment. I want to congratulate Brandon and the North Middlesex Stars on the prospects game that they held last week. Saturday, sorry. Thank you. I did attend. It was really well done. It was good hockey. It was a good game. It had everything you could imagine. They went to overtime. They scored with 3.7 seconds left, took it to overtime, but well done by the players, the coaches that were involved, and by the arena, and as well as the Stars. And I think I heard there was 8 OHL scouts there that were represented there. So it was very good. And they're hoping to make that a longer term commitment. I look forward to seeing that scoreboard utilized, tomorrow as we talked about, but it was really well done. I want to make comment to that. If there's no other business, what can we move on to now? Go ahead.
Your worship, I have a suggestion that we recess until 7 o'clock.
All right.
Your worship, can I just make one comment? We are losing a staff member and he's moving on to a new opportunity. And I just want to recognize Jaden Hodgins for his work in North Middlesex, and he'll be sorely missed.
Just so you know, I'm dropping all my intact insurance and I'm switching to something else, just not related at all, but yes. Yes, very much. Best wishes to you going forward. All the best. You're leaving the place better than you came. And that's all you can ask for from anyone that came. And I want to thank you very much. So we will, I just have motion, take a break here for,
Can we do
until
county
7?
council comments first or not?
Pardon me?
County council, communications, can we do that quickly?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
'Cause I have one question.
Yes,
for
go ahead.
Jaden
Go ahead.
Before he leaves us. Jaden, I was wondering if, do you have any knowledge or maybe Mayor Rob, you do, on the Wi-Fi or the wireless or the fiber that's going into our municipality? When is it going to be active? Do either of you know?
I don't have an answer. Maybe we can find out from county IT on that, but
I actually
Unless-
called Northern Telecom, but they never got back to me, and that was like 3 weeks ago.
okay, you have nothing.
Yeah, through the mayor, no, I don't have a date, but we can certainly reach out and get us an update and I'm sure Mr. Ruffley would also be willing to, give a more formal update to council. I know they come in for a few, so.
Yeah, we could
that's
maybe
not-
ask him to come and do an update to council. That would be
Well,
great.
his last update said it would be activated this past June. And it's a long past June and they've done some work on it, but it looks to me like there's still significant work to be done.
So maybe the best is to ask him to come and do an update for us. Okay. Anything else?
Just on that point, your worship, it really depends which company you go with, because the other one is Hay Communications.
Yep.
And mine is active. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay. All right. We'll take a break till 7 o'clock.